Michael Smerconish, who's a nationally syndicated radio talk show host and MSNBC contributor. Steve Deace is a conservative Iowa radio host who endorsed Newt Gingrich. And A.B. Stoddard is with us again, associate editor and columnist for The Hill. Steve, I'll start off with you. And talking about Newt Gingrich here, he was, to say the least, extremely upset. You heard John Harwood categorize it as perhaps the worst he's seen after the caucuses there. What do you make of Newt's, I guess it's a veil threat, or maybe it's just direct. He says he's going after Romney.
What I think is you don't ever tell the smartest guy in the room he's got nothing to lose. And I had dinner with Newt in August right around the straw poll, and everyone said he was out, and he had lost his team to Rick Perry, and he came roaring back. He sort of had that eye of the tiger look that your previous guest was discussing. And I think you can see he's got that look again. And whenever Newt feels backed into a corner, that's actually, from a conservative's perspective, when he's at his best.
Yeah, but backed in the corner, when you come out, you have to come out swinging with something. Does he have anything at this point that will propel him back to the top, or is it simply a strategy to destroy Romney? Because what does he have that would bring him back?
Well, first of all, Gingrich is still, by far, other than Romney, the most organized and well-funded candidate in South Carolina and Florida, the states that are actually going to determine this nomination. And sure, he's got ammunition against Romney. His record, from Romney Care to taxpayer-funded abortions to what he did to marriage in that state, to all the lies the guy tells, to all the flip-flops the guy has, there's lots of ammunition against Romney.
Why didn't it work in Iowa, Steve? Why didn't it work in Iowa if he's got so much ammunition on the ready?
Well, because, frankly, Newt made a foolish tactical error by saying, I'm going to run a positive campaign. You know, don't ever say I'm going to stay positive against a self-financed rhino with a lot of rich friends who don't give a rip about the country.
Well,
and I think we learned that lesson in Iowa.
Well, here's the deal. You say that he made the mistake of saying that he would remain positive. Well, he's made the mistake again, because he said that again last night, that he will remain positive, but he has the right to tell the truth. So he's not taking your advice. Let me bring in Michael Smerconish here. Let's talk about Rick Santorum. Michael, you know Rick Santorum very well. You are from Pennsylvania, and you've got strong opinions on whether or not he has the ability to go the distance here.
I don't think that he does. I think for all the reasons, Tamron, that he did so well in Iowa, and by all accounts, this ought to be regarded as a Santorum victory, not as a tie, not as a second-place finish. So I give him all props for having had that strong showing in Iowa. But they loved his ideological purity. They love about Rick Santorum that he walks the walk and talks the talk. They love that he's prepared emotionally to take that fight to Barack Obama in the way that they want, which is really with a pugilist. But for all of those reasons, he's ill-suited to win the independents who hold the cards in November. If he should become the Republican nominee, he's not a guy who can carry suburbia.
Okay, Michael, let me play a little bit of what Rick Santorum said yesterday in his speech. Everyone is categorizing it as amazing. It was from the heart. Let's listen to what he said.
If we have someone who can go out to western Pennsylvania and Ohio and Michigan and Indiana and Wisconsin and Iowa and Missouri and appeal to the voters that have been left behind by a Democratic Party that wants to make them dependent instead of valuing their work, we will win this election.
So, Michael, there was an article today asking if Santorum is the working class hero. How do you answer that?
He lost Pennsylvania by 17 points in the '06 election. So, you know, the glass is either half full when people will say, well, he represented Pennsylvania. It's true, but he lost by an enormous margin in the last go-round. And I don't think anything has changed between '06 and the present where he could come back and win the state. If he can't win his own state, I don't think he's a viable candidate nationwide.
A.B., let me bring you in. I've just been handed a note. John Huntsman responding to Senator John McCain endorsing Mitt Romney. We actually saw that in the last hour, and Huntsman says, I have great regard for Senator McCain. I love the man, but it is another example of establishment piling on, and it seems the more establishment piles on, Dole, McCain, all the rest, nobody cares. Nobody cares about this. That's what Huntsman is saying about McCain endorsing Romney. We know it's all or nothing for John Huntsman in New Hampshire, and he seems to be ready for the fight.
Well, it's so interesting that he still is aiming his fire at Mitt Romney when I really think he needs to aim it at Rick Santorum, who's coming straight to the state to try to take the fight to Mitt Romney there, riding his momentum from a win in Iowa or a tie in Iowa. I don't really look at Iowa like a Mitt Romney victory because it was within 8 votes and he got fewer votes than he did last time. But Jon Huntsman needs to know that if you're looking for an anti-Romney choice, you're looking now at Jon Huntsman or Rick Santorum in New Hampshire. So he needs to really focus. He's laid the groundwork. He's done tons of events, I think 130 or something. He's getting larger and larger crowds. He is growing his vote in New Hampshire, and he needs to focus at the anti-Romney voter and try to make sure that he can consolidate those voters in New Hampshire and keep them away from Rick Santorum and stop aiming his fire at Romney. But
with that said, A.B., it seems that Huntsman has run away from his conservative resume. He's played largely to liberals, as it said, on the East Coast, in the Northeast, and hasn't touted those conservative values that he believes that might help him out. Because if he goes head-to-head with Rick Santorum and he's hiding behind the post with his record with conservatives, how does that help him?
Well, he hasn't been anticipating a Rick Santorum victory, and Jon Huntsman, as you are correct in pointing out, is playing to a more libertarian, more moderate Republican electorate in New Hampshire, where in a contest, as you know, independents will be able to vote. So that is a contest that Rick Santorum is not well positioned for. He is well positioned for South Carolina. Jon Huntsman actually is conservative on several issues. He has an unquestionable pro-life and pro-gun record, and he, touts himself as a fiscal conservative in his time as governor of Utah with balanced budgets, etc. He is going to have to take that case now to the voters of New Hampshire and South Carolina and say that he's as conservative, fiscally at least, and on the life and gun issue as Rick Santorum. I don't think he was ready for the victory last night, but he's probably going to be changing his speeches a bit in the days to come.
And Steve, let me bring you back in. Politico is reporting exclusively that there's been an invitation sent out to conservatives to meet in Texas. A part of it says you and your spouse are cordially invited to a private meeting with national conservative leaders of faith with the purpose of attempting to unite and come to a consensus on which Republican presidential candidate or candidates to support and which not to support. That is happening in the great state of Texas, where Rick Perry fled last night, but he says he's coming back to South Carolina. What do you make of this call for these religious conservatives to stand behind someone?
Well, I think it's about time. I think we need to stop doing high school where it's your clique versus my clique and start being grown-ups and realize that 4 years ago we saw Mike Huckabee and Fred Thompson split this vote and hand the nomination in South Carolina to John McCain. And we're heading right down the exact same road again unless we coalesce behind one conservative candidate who actually has a national resume and the ability to organize and raise money in the states that are going to determine this, which is South Carolina and Florida. And right now I think that candidate is Newt Gingrich.
All right, Steve, thank you. A.B., thank you as well. And Michael, of course, always a big thank you to you. Thanks, Michael.